Somewhere in America, right now, a corporate boardroom is popping champagne. They just had their best year in history. Record-breaking revenue, all-time high stock price, and high fives all around the table. But 2 floors down, in the exact same building, someone is sitting at their desk, staring at their screen, opening an email with the subject line, 2026 compensation update. Their heart skips a beat. They actually lean in, hoping the late nights and missed dinners finally paid off. Their raise? 2%. Inflation alone ate that before it even hit the direct deposit. Let's just say what nobody in power wants to admit out loud. This past year was a historic victory for corporate balance sheets, and a quiet, brutal gut punch to the millions of workers who built those numbers with their own 2 hands. Look at the data. Right now, American workers are taking home the smallest share of the national economic pie since tracking began in 1947. Think about that for a second. That is nearly 8 decades. We are not talking about a 5-year slump or a rough patch after a recession. We are talking about the lowest worker share in 78 years. Meanwhile, corporate profits as a share of the economy just hit levels not seen since 1950. So that missing piece of the pie didn't just vanish into thin air. It went somewhere very specific. Remember the unwritten deal this country ran on for decades? You put in the extra hours, the company makes more money, and everyone gets a piece. A rising tide lifts all boats. And between the late 1940s and the early 70s, that was actually true. Productivity went up, wages went up right beside it, matched step for step on the exact same graph. Then, around 1973, that line quietly cracked. Since then, worker productivity has surged roughly 60%, while typical compensation barely crawled up by 10. That means the extra value generated by the same sweat, the same stress, and the same screen time didn't disappear. It just got redirected to a completely different floor. Where did it go? It's not a mystery. Decades ago, a CEO made about 20 times what their average employee took home. Today, at major firms, that ratio easily blows past 300 to 1. Then add the hundreds of billions funneled straight into stock buybacks every single quarter. Stock buybacks don't build new factories. They don't hire more staff. They don't upgrade broken equipment, and they definitely don't bump up base salaries. They do one thing: artificially pump the share price to make wealthy investors and stock-compensated executives even richer. And the latest excuse making the rounds is almost insulting. We're pouring everything into AI infrastructure, so raises have to wait. Except the actual productivity gains from that AI haven't even shown up on the ground yet. Workers are being told to tighten their belts right now for theoretical savings down the road. Economists have a term for this reality: the K-shaped economy. Picture the letter K. The top arm shoots straight up into the stratosphere. Luxury travel, booming investment portfolios, sold-out first-class cabins. The bottom arm slopes steadily downward. Stagnant wages, drained emergency savings, and ordinary people trying to figure out how groceries cost 40% more than they used to. It's the same country and the same economic year, but 2 entirely different realities. Luxury resorts are breaking booking records, while budget motels are struggling to fill rooms. It's written clearly in consumer spending data. And this isn't just an executive versus worker divide, it's splitting the workforce itself. High-income households saw their after-tax income grow by over 5% this year, while middle and lower-income families barely scraped together 1 to 2%. That wage gap within the working population is wider than it's been since they started tracking that specific metric back in 2015. The most frustrating part is the double talk. When leadership talks to you, it's all about caution. It was a tough environment for our division, or we have to stay lean to remain competitive. Yet on the investor earnings call literally 20 minutes earlier, the script flipped entirely. Record revenue, crushed all quarterly expectations, raising guidance for the fiscal year. A company cannot be struggling and breaking records at the exact same moment. It just depends on whether they're talking to the people they pay or the people who own the stock. On top of that, headline job numbers hide the reality that hiring is heavily concentrated in just 1 or 2 sectors, like healthcare and social assistance. Most other corporate sectors are quietly shedding headcount or freezing roles entirely. Growth without hiring, profit without payroll. It's a corporate playbook designed to squeeze more output out of fewer people, while subtly reminding the survivors that they should just be grateful to have a seat. Economists call these superstar firms, massive conglomerates that dominate entire markets. When 50 competitors shrink down to 5 giants, they don't have to fight for your talent anymore. They don't need to offer competitive wages because you have nowhere else to go. So bring it back to that single employee opening that single email. A 2% raise after a record-breaking year. Multiply that exact feeling across tens of millions of people nationwide, and it becomes painfully clear. This isn't an accident of the market. It isn't bad luck. It is a calculated, deliberate corporate choice about who gets rewarded when times are good and who gets asked to absorb the hit when they aren't. Next time you see a press release boasting about historical profits, look past the celebratory headline. Ask the real question. Record profits for who, exactly, and whose paycheck had to be quietly sacrificed just to make that headline happen.